Welcome to Conlang Criticism, the show that gets facts wrong about no one's favorite conlangs. I'm Jan Munkule, and in this episode, we'll be looking at Paresi, an a posteriori Romlang with heavy Semitic influence. The main sources I'll be using in this video are this online reference grammar of Paresi and the How to Make an A Posteriori Language video series on this channel, which features Paresi as its model language. The form of Paresi I'll be reviewing here was created in 2021 by me. Hence, I could use my private Apple numbers spreadsheet as a source, but that's cheating. And also, I couldn't find it. So yeah, I'm reviewing my own conlang. This video is inspired by Lichen and of course the venerable Jan Misali. So the reference grammar says that Paresi is a Romlang, or an a posteriori conlang that falls within the Romance language family and descends from Latin. However, as we'll see in this video, Paresi has a lot of influence from languages that are not Latin, including on its grammar, and so this designation is debatable. Paresi just as well could be a hybrid language. So, since it's an a posteriori conlang, it doesn't need worldbuilding, right? Wrong! A posteriori conlangs need just as much worldbuilding as a priori ones, if not more, because you have to justify everything historically. The fictional history of Paresi is really well documented in the reference grammar and in the first two videos of the How to Make an A Posteriori Conlang series, but I'll give you guys a brief summary. Basically, Justinian flees to Thessaloniki after the Nika riots in 532, the northern half of the Byzantine Empire is taken over by the Sassanids, the southern half goes to this new state, the Paresi Empire, which speaks like African Vulgar Latin mixed with Punic, mixed with Coptic and Greek, and everything else people were speaking in Roman Egypt at the time. Then the Arabs come, take over all of it plus some, then a new religion is formed and people revolt against the Arabs, and finally a second Paresi Empire is formed, speaking basically what they spoke before plus some Arabic. They also conquer southern Italy and Greece. So basically it seems like the creator of this conlang pretty much just came up with this history to justify all of the different influences which make it this cool hybrid language thing, and so it does feel a little kitchen sinky. But it is an awesome history, and it is cool to see why each language influenced Paresi and when, and in what ways. And it's also cool to see how plausible it is historically. My one critique here is that the reference grammar refers to Paresi as a pidgin, but I think the term hybrid language is much better suited. Paresi takes grammatical elements from Latin and Carthaginian Punic, and even Greek sometimes, without being overly simplified or regularized, and those are the trademarks of what makes something a pidgin. And since it's evolved for so long, it wouldn't even be a pidgin anymore. It would be a Creole. But it's not a Creole or a pidgin, it's a hybrid language at all steps of its evolution. Other than that, though, the world building is great. On to the phonology. The consonants are ma, na, pa, ta, tsa, cha, tra, ka, a, ba, da, za, cha, tra, ga, ga, fa, tha, sa, sha, sha, hya, ha, ha, la, ra. Now wait a second. This language is supposed to be naturalistic, right? I've never seen a NATLANG with 4 sets of coronal consonants, each at a different place of articulation. I mean, it was even a struggle for me to distinguish them while reading. And okay, I googled it, and Sicilian apparently can be analyzed to have the same 4 sets, which is probably where the creator got this from, but okay, I guess. But also, I looked in the reference grammar, and there's actually another solution to this mystery. The reference grammar has a really nice section on dialects, which I won't really get into here, except for this one chart. Basically, the underlying Paresi phonemes are on the left, and each column represents a specific dialect and how they pronounce them. Presumably, this applies not to just voiceless stops, but also to the whole place of articulation. So if I spoke Alexandrian Paresi, I would have a 2-way distinction between tsa and cha, whereas if I spoke Greek Paresi, I would have a 3-way distinction between tsa, cha, and ka. What's cool is that not one dialect preserves the 4-way distinction, and that each dialect can be distinguished solely based on how it divides up these 4 sound classes. Although, I guess that's how they define the dialects to begin with, so maybe that isn't that interesting. Actually, wait, Italian still has all 4? That must be a mistake. Or maybe that's just Sicilian. Also, ja isn't really a sonorant, but I can see how they put it in that category. And wow, this is a really gritty consonant chart. Honestly beautiful. Although, I guess if you make it really phonetically accurate, it doesn't look as gritty anymore. Actually, no, it's still pretty gritty. The vowels are I, U, e, o, a. Wow, another 5-vowel system. The diphthongs are ya, wa, I, yo, we, you, we, ow. Gonna be honest, I have no idea why I is high and ow is low, other than that rhyming. Oh my god, but whatever. The phonotactics of Paresi are pretty well developed, but also kind of crazy. This is the allowed syllable structure, and these are most of the phonotactic rules. It's really cool how you can see so much Arabic influence here with the first 2 restraints and the last one, because it was the last language to really make its mark on Paresi. But there's one problem which I actually did not realize until I had started recording this video, but the first restraint just is not followed ever in the grammar or any of the examples. Initial P occurs all the time, including in the name of the language itself. Like, literally the first 3 examples in the reference grammar have words starting with P. I don't know what's going on here. I'm just going to pretend this is a typo. Paresi also has this system of hard and soft consonants, where basically each consonant's base form is what it's realized as word initially, and everything is hard when geminated and soft otherwise. For fricatives and voiced plosives, their base form is their hard form, and for everything else the base form is soft. So this basically means that there's 2 different major patterns of allophony in the language, which is cool. This also means that unvoiced fricatives merge with voiced plosives in soft contexts, and with unvoiced plosives in hard contexts. But with this system, it just really feels like there must be a better way to analyze this phonemically. Also, the retroflexes aren't included in it for some reason, unless there's a typo on the chart I was reading, so there's clearly some weird stuff going on. I don't want to spend too much time on it though, so let's move on. Yeah, so I did not move on. I read through the pretty detailed sound changes section of the reference grammar, and basically it does seem like this is an okay way to think about it, but only because there's some productive morphological gemination and because stress patterns are pretty regular depending on syllable weight, in which gemination plays a big part. Otherwise, you honestly could just get away with outlawing initial voiced fricatives and coda stops, and that's basically it. And with the retroflexes, in the Western dialects which keep them distinct, I think their hard and soft forms just aren't distinct from their base form. Which leads to the question, are they phonemic at all? But I think they are because they can occur word finally and clusters can't. So like an example of the productive morphological gemination I was talking about before is with the definite marker. For words which start with consonants, the definite marker is just a prefixed a, and can even be realized solely as the softening of the following consonant. Although definiteness actually works really weird in this language, and so these translations probably aren't great. Something being definite means it's a specific physical thing, or it has a demonstrative, or it's a predicate, and it can't be possessed or next to something in the construct state, so usually definiteness is not actually optional. But anyway, this is basically consonant mutation, right? Which is cool and actually pretty well attested in some Italian languages, so it doesn't actually surprise me that much that it's here. It's pretty annoying that they don't list the orthography on the table of phonemes, but instead in this annoyingly long chart. Probably because there's 3 different scripts which work in different ways, but still, there's no way I'm reading off this. So this is a wacky orthography, but if you look at it historically, I think it kind of makes sense. Honestly, everything makes sense to me on face value, except for sha being represented by W and tha being represented by X. But I think it's because in Neo-Punic, the letter for sha looks like a W and the letter for tha looks like an X. And so somehow when Paresi people started using the Roman alphabet to write their language, they kind of just transferred those phonemes to whatever Latin letter looked most like the Paresi counterpart. I don't know, man. In general, the Arabic script is pretty phonemic, which makes sense because it would apply later, and the Paresi alphabet works similarly to the Roman alphabet for Paresi, with the addition of special letters pretty much wherever the Roman alphabet uses digraphs. Also, you can see here how sha and tha are represented by letters that basically look like W and X, and how otherwise the alphabet looks something like Latin, something like Phoenician, and how the letters for what were originally loan phonemes are Arabic or Coptic based. Also, apparently the Paresi script is like really not phonemic and also includes some logograms which look like the Arabic script version of the word they represent. So that's the orthography. Except there's a whole nother section on romanization. Okay, so this explains all the weird romanization stuff as a spelling reform, but then apparently the reform was so confusing to northern traders that they started mispronouncing Paresi because it was so confusing and they just created a whole new dialect? Onto the grammar. Paresi is an agglutinative head-marking language with polypersonal agreement, a fluid S alignment, converbs, alignment system, a fluid S alignment system, converbs, double negation, and a zero copula. Typical Conlang. Paresi has a lot of affixes. A ton of nominal affixes for class, gender, number, state, definiteness, case, and possessor, and there's at least one example sentence or word for each affix. What's cool is that certain affixes come from Neo-Punic and others from Latin, and you can see how nouns of different sources form different conjugation classes in this chart. The language also has reduplication for diminutives and some nice derivational affixes based on both Romance suffixes and non-concatenative Semitic vowel changes, which I think are more poetic but also more productive in the modern language. Pronouns aren't usually overt, but they do exist emphatically and when conjugated by case. And there is an animacy distinction, at least in some cases. Also, I think the lative here is probably actually the dative. Adjectives agree with nouns and are conjugated similarly. Verbs are even crazier than nouns though, and there's a complex system of what prefixes can be used with what suffixes. Verbs agree with all of their arguments, subjects, direct objects, and indirect objects, even when these elements are present overtly. So basically, the first affix that goes on a finite verb is basically an aspect affix. So either you choose to represent the progressive, habitual, or near aspect, in which case you can then represent agent person, or you choose to represent imperfective, perfective, future subjunctive, or present, the last of which is encoded by just not having a prefix at all. And yeah, I know those aren't all aspects, but I think this makes them more interesting. After that, you can attach an indirect object or reflexive prefix if necessary. Then you have the actual root of the verb, and then you have a suffix representing agent number, and potentially also agent person if you didn't have it before. If you did represent agent person before by using one of the agent person prefixes, then you also get to encode tense here. The multiform suffixes are basically used with agent person prefixes, and the single form suffixes are used without them. And finally, you can add a patient pronoun if necessary. This means there are 12 potential combinations of tense, aspect, and mood that can be encoded on a single verb. 6 of them are indicated with prefixes only, and the other 6 with a combination of prefixes and suffixes. This is pretty crazy. I'm not really sure how naturalistic it is, but I think it's cool. The reference grammar analyzes Paresi as a fluid S-active state of language, which is kind of cringe, but does make sense for a polypersonal language. Agent affixes are dropped when there's no agent, and patient suffixes are dropped when there's no patient. And you did see an accusative prefix before, but it's pretty much optional except for in some weird edge cases. Because of all this agreement and potential case marking, Paresi has very free word order, which it uses to express topic or emphasis. Typically the topic comes first and the verb comes last, but verb initial sentences are more common formally, probably due to Arabic influence. There are 3 types of converbs in Paresi: anterior, assemblative, and terminative. Terminative. For things you're doing before, during, and after you're doing other things. There are 6 different negative markers, which, oh my god, cannot be naturalistic. I think it was based on Coptic, which does have a lot of different negative markers, but I don't think this many, and also, this just feels a bit much. Maybe too kitchen sinky for my taste, especially because it seems like 2 of these come from Latin, 2 from some Semitic language, and the other 2 probably from Coptic. I don't know, this is just a bit much. Also, do you use the negative marker plus the aspect prefix, or does this mean you just don't have to use aspect prefixes in negative sentences? Anyway, there are also a lot of modal auxiliary verbs similar to those in other Romance languages, like scigi, possi, divegi, bevi, and amalagi. The last of which I think is Semitic inspired, but the others are definitely Latin based. Not much to say about the vocab because it can't be found online outside of samples in the reference grammar and in the How to Make Your Own a Posteriori language series, but that's still a good amount to go off of, and it seems like there's a good mix of Latin, Semitic, Berber, Greek, and Coptic stuff in there. Whether this kitchen sinkish mix is possible in the real world, I honestly don't know, but it does seem like there's at least some method to the madness, and it seems like the vocab isn't evenly divided into those sources, but more according to Zipf's curve. There are a lot of fun sample sentences in the grammar, like this one which I'll read now. Paresi homosului mandukada sunavihon bavichara nuchtizi ochtu. Since I haven't reviewed any other conlangs yet, I will say that Paresi is my favorite conlang I've reviewed so far. Thanks for watching, and see you next time on Conlang Criticism with your host,